The Commission has found that the Israeli security forces have intentionally killed and seriously harmed an unprecedented number of Palestinians. The Commission also took into consideration the methods of war and the types of weapons used by the Israeli security forces, which showed a consistent pattern that caused and was intended to cause a large number of casualties, including deaths of Palestinians in Gaza.
Hello and welcome to this special interview. I am Muneef Khan, and today we are joined by Navi Pillay, Chair of the United Nations Independent International Commission of Inquiry on the Occupied Palestinian Territory, including East Jerusalem and Israel. On the 16th of September, her commission released one of the most significant reports in recent UN history, a detailed legal analysis that concludes Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. The report documents staggering findings: more than 60,000 Palestinians killed, including over 18,000 children, a collapse in life expectancy by nearly 35 years, the destruction of Gaza's largest IVF clinic and thousands of embryos, and the killing of over 1,300 people while seeking food at 8 sites. This report carries profound legal and political implications, not only for Israel, but for the entire international community. Today, we'll speak directly with Navi Pillay about what these findings mean, why the Commission reached this conclusion, and what must happen next. My first question, of course, by concluding that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza, your report has set one of the highest possible legal thresholds. What should the international community take from this finding, and what are its immediate implications?
Well, thank you for acknowledging the importance of the report. And let me say, it took us 2 years of collecting evidence, verifying, checking before we came to these conclusions. So, first of all, the international community need not wait for a report from a UN body like us, the Commission, nor do they need to wait for a ruling on genocide by an international court, such as the ICJ, International Court of Justice. Third states have an obligation under international law not just to punish genocide, but also to prevent genocide. And this duty has been triggered at least since January 2024 through the first provisional measures ordered by the ICJ in the South Africa application against Israel. This commission's report is the most authoritative report from a UN body to date. The commission applied a stringent standard similar to the standard applied at the ICJ regarding the specific intent element of the Genocide Convention. Therefore, the Commission's report should be referred to by the international community as a strong indicator that they must act now to stop the ongoing genocide in the Gaza Strip. As I said, that is a preemptive obligation on every state to prevent genocide and punish the commission of genocide. And so the Commission has provided some concrete recommendations to states, and these recommendations should be taken seriously and implemented as soon as possible.
And before we delve further into the report, I wanted to talk about the news that has broken less than 24 hours ago. US President Donald Trump's 20-point plan for Gaza. And why I do bring this question is that I wanted to understand, how do you view this plan in relation to your commission's findings? And more importantly, are you concerned that such high-profile diplomatic initiatives, which are often driven by power politics rather than international law, could marginalize or even eclipse the work of UN accountability mechanisms such as your commission?
Well, our recommendations coincide with the demands of public all over the world for immediate ceasefire and for a solution. I'm not recommending a two-state solution, but the UN does. And of course, the participation of Palestine is very important. The declaration acknowledging Palestine as a state, I think, is very important. It happened on last week, I think, when at the high-level summit meeting. And so we're very wary if politicians with agendas, political leaders with agendas gathered together in secret to come up with the solution. It should be open and open to the scrutiny of the media, NGOs, and so on. I think that this report, with all its facts and findings, should be a factor to be taken into account by those who are negotiating a settlement.
And but I would want to repeat one part of my previous question is that do you feel that such high profile diplomatic initiatives could eclipse or marginalize the findings of your commission, for instance, because suddenly the conversation across the globe has now moved towards this so-called 20-point plan for Gaza?
Yeah, that's why I began by saying that there are expectations from the world's public, and it coincides with what we are asking for here: investigate and prosecute genocide. So there must be not just peace, but justice and accountability. And that's where these negotiations threaten the risk or present a risk that they may not go that far. They may just come up with a patched up peace, which will soon break down. Yeah.
And coming to the report itself, so the commission verified that over 60,000 Palestinians were killed, including more than 18,000 children and nearly 10,000 women. I'm quoting straight from the report.
Yeah.
What do these figures tell us about who was targeted?
Well, more than 50% of those killed in Gaza were women, children, and the elderly. They're not combatants, they're civilians. The Commission also took into consideration the methods of war and the types of weapons used by the Israeli security forces, which showed a consistent pattern that caused and was intended to cause a large number of casualties, including deaths of Palestinians in Gaza. Considering these factors, the Commission found that the Israeli security forces intentionally killed and harmed Palestinian civilians. This shows that the Israeli claims that they conducted their military operations A, to destroy Hamas, B, in self defense, or three, to secure the release of the hostages, were unjustified and unreasonable. The evidence does not support those motivations that Israel is putting out. So, taking into account the mass killings, excuse me, of Palestinians in Gaza. So, as I was saying, taking into account the mass killings of Palestinians in Gaza and the resulting serious bodily and mental harm, the Commission found that there was a consistent pattern that clearly showed the intent to physically destroy Palestinians in Gaza as a plea.
And you also cite research showing life expectancy in Gaza collapsed by almost 35 years in a single year, to be specific, from 75.5 to 40.5 years. Why is this demographic collapse such a critical indicator of group destruction?
Well, the Commission cited this data to show that the Israeli security forces have directly caused the steep decline of life expectancy in Gaza since 7th October 2023. This shows the direct link between the Israeli security forces' conduct of killing and harming Palestinians and the creation of conditions that eventually lead to the death of Palestinians. Example, the impossibility to access healthcare, starvation, malnutrition, and so on, and the decrease in life expectancy in just 1 year is shocking. Yeah, that's why we attribute it to these conditions.
Okay. And in December 2023, and this is more to do with the IVF clinic, an Israeli strike had destroyed Gaza's largest clinic, wiping out around 4,000 embryos and 1,000 sperm and egg samples. So, how does this act fall under the convention's prohibitions on preventing births within the group? Because I think Article 2D of the Genocide Convention does state something about this.
And this clinic is the only fertility clinic in Gaza, well known. And as you said, with 4,000 embryos and about 1,000 sperm and egg samples. In the report, we stated that Israeli security forces launched a tank shell that directly hit the clinic and caused the explosion of 5 liquid nitrogen tanks, consequently destroying all the reproductive material that was stored therein for future conception of Palestinians. It is unnecessary to prove that was actual prevention of birth for an act to qualify as genocide. What is crucial is an act that was intended to prevent births within the group with the specific intent to destroy such a group. Nevertheless, the commission interviewed an expert physician, among other doctors, on reproductive medicine, and he told us that the attack on the Ivy Clinic will, to quote him, have repercussions for generations to come. Children who were meant to be born from these 5,000 reproductive specimens will never exist. The commission found that the Israeli authorities knew that the medical center was a fertility clinic and that they intended to destroy it. This facility was intentionally targeted and destroyed by the Israeli security forces by directly destroying those nitrogen tanks that kept the embryos alive. And this facility was intentionally targeted by the Israeli security forces, knowing that the result of such conduct would be the prevention, in part, of reproduction of Palestinians in Gaza. The Commission has found that the destruction of the clinic was calculated to prevent births of Palestinians in Gaza and to destroy Palestinians in Gaza as a group, in part. So those are the elements of the crime of genocide.
And I also want to bring the conversation now to food, seeking food as part of aid. So since May 2025, at least 1,373 Palestinians, to be specific, have been killed while seeking food at Gaza Humanitarian Foundation distribution sites and convoys. 859 of them at sites, 515 of them along routes. Why did the Commission consider these killings central to its analysis of genocidal policy?
Policy or plan to commit genocide can be inferred from the totality of evidence based on the pattern of conduct and the statements made by political leaders. The Commission analyzed the statements of Israeli authorities and the pattern of conduct of the authorities and the security forces. In relation to the pattern of conduct, indeed, the killings at the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation sites and along the route were considered, but it was part of an analysis on the totality of evidence. The investigation on the killing of Palestinians at GHF sites and along the routes, as we all know, is ongoing. However, several doctors have already told the Commission have treated many Palestinian children who were shot at GHF sites, including a 1.5-year-old baby girl who was shot while she was in her mother's arms. Within this context, we found that the widespread and systematic targeting of children was part of a strategy to destroy the Palestinian group in Gaza.
And I also want to bring your attention to a horrific incident on the 23rd of March 2025 at Tal As Sultan. 15 first responders were killed and the ambulances bulldozed into mass graves. What did your investigation conclude about this incident, and what does it reveal about Israel's methods of warfare?
Well, firstly, let's not forget we all saw how they spread a false story and then investigated when the videos came out. Now, in our previous reports, the Commission has found that Israeli security forces have deliberately targeted and killed Palestinian medical personnel and aid workers in Gaza. The Commission found that the overall security forces intentionally shot at the first responders on 23rd March 2025, and due to the extensive duration of the gunfire, it is reasonable to find that the Israeli security forces had intended to kill the victims, and they knew that the victims were Palestinians. The attack on 23rd March 2025 on the first responders fits in the pattern of conduct of the Israeli security forces that shows the targeting of healthcare workers, and shows the intention to destroy the healthcare system in Gaza. And so I think this is a very important evidence as well that we connect to the genocidal intent.
And the commission determined that Israel committed four underlying genocidal acts: killings, serious harm, destruction of conditions of life, and preventing births. But what was the decisive evidence that distinguished genocide from other international crimes?
That's a good question, Muneef. And most people could feel it's impossible to establish genocidal intent. So here I want to briefly remind you that I was on the panel of judges in the Rwanda tribunal and delivered the world's first judgment on genocide. And there it's a criminal case with the highest standard of proof of genocidal intent. In order to show that these acts constitute the crime of genocide, it must be proven that the acts were committed with the intention to destroy in whole or in part four groups: a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group as such. Such a specific intent can be proven through direct evidence, that is, statements of officials and authorities, and circumstantial evidence, meaning the analysis of the pattern of conduct of the Israeli authorities and the security forces, as I said earlier, taking into account the totality of evidence. The Commission concluded that statements made by Israeli authorities were direct evidence of genocidal intent. And in analyzing the circumstantial evidence, the Commission considered several factors and concluded that the pattern of conduct of the Israeli authorities and the security forces showed the specific intent to commit genocide in Gaza. So let me elaborate on that because this is an important question uh, that some states feel there's no genocidal intent. First, the Commission has found that the Israeli security forces have intentionally killed and seriously harmed an unprecedented number of Palestinians in Gaza since 7th October 23, using heavy munitions. More than 50% of those who were killed were women, children, and elderly persons, indicating that the Israeli security forces have deliberately targeted Palestinian civilians. Considering the mass killings, the serious bodily and mental harm caused, and the lack of accountability, the Commission found that there was a consistent pattern that clearly showed the intent to physically destroy Palestinians as a group in Gaza. Second, the systematic and widespread attack on religious, cultural, and education sites throughout Gaza since 7th October 23 was aimed at causing irreversible harm to Palestinians in Gaza by destroying elements of the Palestinian people's identity and erasing Palestinian culture from Gaza. Centuries old monuments were destroyed. What has that got to do with defending themselves? Um, so, third, the Commission concluded that the conduct of the Israeli authorities was a strong indication of the intention to destroy the Palestinian group in Gaza through starvation and blocking of humanitarian aid into Gaza. And fourth, the systematic and complete destruction of the healthcare system in Gaza, the deprivation of medical necessities to Palestinians, and the denial of medical exit visas to Palestinians who were in medical need were all part of the intent to destroy Palestinians in Gaza by preventing their capacity and possibility to heal, recover, and live. Fifth, the widespread sexual and gender based violence was instrumentalized not only as punishment against the individuals, but as part of a pattern of collective punishment to fracture, humiliate, and subjugate the Palestinian population in its entirety. We saw the video pictures of what the Israeli soldiers did to Palestinian women, um, and then posted those videos as trophies. Finally, sixth, the Commission concluded that the widespread and systematic targeting of children was part of a strategy to destroy the biological continuity and future existence of the Palestinian group in Gaza, thus, part of the intent to destroy Palestinians in Gaza. Thank you.
Yeah, and you did highlight public statements, and I wanted to talk about the public statements by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, President Herzog, and former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant as examples of direct and public incitement to genocide. But I also wanted to ask, why are these statements legally significant?
Well, they go direct, it's direct evidence of an intention to commit genocide. When you see what the leaders are saying and directing their military to do. I can give you a brief account of some of these statements. As early as the 7th October 2023, Prime Minister Netanyahu vowed to inflict, I quote, mighty vengeance on all of the places which Hamas is deployed, hiding, and operating in that wicked city. We will turn them into rubble. I say to residents of Gaza, leave now because we will operate forcefully everywhere. So, although Netanyahu's statement carefully directed the call for vengeance at Hamas locations, his use of the phrase wicked city in the same statement implied that he saw the whole city of Gaza as responsible and a target for vengeance. He told Palestinians in Gaza, I quote, leave now because we will operate forcefully everywhere, making no distinction between combatants and civilians, and knowing that Palestinians in Gaza had nowhere to go. They were locked in. It's often referred to as a Gaza prison. Now, on 9th October 2023, Israel's then defense minister, Yoav Gallant, announced a complete siege on Gaza, claiming that Israel was fighting, I quote, human animals, and Israel must, I quote, act accordingly. On 10th October 2023, in a speech to Israeli security forces personnel, Gallant stated, I quote, Gaza won't return to what it was before. There will be no Hamas. We will eliminate everything. If it doesn't take one day, it will take a week. It will take weeks or even months. We will reach all places. And on 14th October 2023, President Isaac Herzog stated, and I quote, it's an entire nation out there that is responsible. It is not true, this rhetoric about civilians who are not aware and not involved. It is absolutely not true. And so these statements and many more like this, stated as long ago as 2 years ago, and the genocide has been continuing and is continuing now. They are as a result of these kind of expressions of policy and intention by the authorities. This is why we recommend that these three individuals be investigated for genocide.
And this does bring me to my final two questions. And one has to do with your report that it warned that states supplying arms or political, supplying arms or political support risk breaching their own duty to prevent genocide. What concrete steps must governments take now to comply with international law? And just to remind you also that India also is increasing their defense ties with Israel and is also one of the countries which is technically in this fray.
Yes, we have been mandated to investigate the transfer of arms, military equipment by states to Israel and their responsibility under the Genocide Convention. We haven't received the resources, even though this is 2 years ago that we were mandated, and that would apply directly to your question. I remind all states that indeed the duty to prevent and punish genocide apply not only to the responsible state, that's Israel, but to all states parties to the Genocide Convention, and indeed to all states under customary international law. The Commission therefore urges states to one, ensure that Israel implements all orders for provisional measures issued by the International Court of Justice. Two, all states should take steps to ensure the prevention of conduct that may amount to genocidal acts under the Genocide Convention, including the transfer of weapons that are used or likely to be used by Israel to commit genocidal acts. States must also cease the transfer of other equipment or items, including jet fuel, to the state of Israel or third states where there is reason to suspect their use in military operations that have involved or could involve the commission of genocide. Third, states should conduct investigations themselves and take steps to ensure the punishment of genocide. States must ensure that individuals and corporations in their territories and within their jurisdiction are not involved in the commission of genocide. And next, facilitate investigations and domestic proceedings and take action, including imposing sanctions against the State of Israel and against individuals or corporations that are involved in or facilitating the commission of genocide or incitement to commit genocide. The High Commissioner of Human Rights, uh, Volker Turk, has released the database on companies who are continuing to do business with Israel. Um, States must facilitate investigations and domestic proceedings, as I said, including imposing sanctions. And next, states should intervene in the International Court of Justice proceedings of South Africa versus Israel. India should be proud that they have a judge from India on that court. Um, so it's a matter of shame if India is found to be complicit with Israel by selling or giving them arms. And finally, states should support and cooperate fully with the Office of the Prosecutor of the International Criminal Court in its investigation into the situation in the state of Palestine. So these are some of the recommendations we've made to states.
Ma'am, finally, you recommend that the International Criminal Court pursue genocide charges. Based on your findings, which specific acts should prosecutors prioritize?
Well, first, we do note that all crimes are crimes. So if they are investigated for crimes against humanity, that's a serious crime. As with its previous reports, the Commission recommends that the prosecutor investigate the crimes that the Commission has found in its reports, which now includes genocide. In relation to genocidal acts, the Commission believes that all the underlying acts should be investigated as they constitute a strong pattern of conduct that show the specific intent to commit genocide. So that's the least we can do, is to make a recommendation, because the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, on which I served as a judge as well, is an independent, and his independence to investigate crimes must be respected.
I really appreciate you joining us, ma'am. Thank you, Navi Pillay, and I hope to reconnect with you soon in the near future. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thank you for your great questions.